Welcome to Daily 5 for Thursday, October 10th, 2024. By now, many of you have probably read or seen reviews of the latest Joker film, the sequel to the surprise hit just titled Joker with Joaquin Phoenix and I've completely forgotten the director's name. I apologize. I think it's something Phillips. I think it's like Todd Phillips or something like that. I don't remember. But in any event, the first Joker film, I don't think many people expected to be successful. It turned out that it was. It was very well received. It made a bunch of money, and so it was pretty much inevitable that there will be a sequel, which has now come out. And it has not been generally as well received as the first film. And I'm going to not even bother talking about the movie itself or the story or any of that stuff. I read the story, and I've seen a lot of the different reviews of it. I didn't see the first film. I don't really care to see the first film, but I know that it was, again, well received, made a bunch of money. And the thing is, that the thing that I think is the biggest shame about this sequel not doing as well, I'm not going to say it's a failure. Some people are calling it a flop. I don't know what the actual end totals will be. So for right now, let's just say that it is unlikely there will be a third film based on the performance of the second one. And I think in some ways, the biggest shame of that is the thing that I liked most about the first film, that again, I did not see. The thing that I enjoyed about its success was that it felt like it was a message to say to the studios, DC and to some degree Marvel, hey, you can experiment with these characters. You can do something that does not follow the same formula, does not have to exist in the same universe, and allows people to tell really interesting, individual, and frankly, weird stories. The first Joker film is very much a Joker story, if you read what it is, without it being, okay, this is the same character that appeared in the Tim Burton film, is the same character that appeared in the Christopher Nolan movies. This is no less a Joker story, but it is a Joker story that most people would not have expected. I have talked about in the past many times these books that came out way back in the 90s called Tales of the Joker and Tales of the Batman. And the one I liked best was the Tales of the Joker book, because it really let these authors tell some weird, individual, and very distinctive stories about the same character who was not the same character from story to story. Each one was a very different take on this character that most people at this point are very familiar with. And so again, the thing that I enjoyed about the first movie being successful, even while having no interest in it myself, was that it appeared to be something that would signal to these studios that you can play around with these characters. They don't always have to follow the same exact trajectory. Their backstories don't have to be the same. They don't require the same characters around them to be able to work. That if you just tell a good story, you can adapt the character to that story where in a way that it still feels like it is true to the character. That Joker movie, again, I haven't seen it, but I read all the plot for it. That is not something that doesn't make sense to me as an origin for that character. You know, it doesn't have to be that he was dropped in a vat of acid and got deformed and it made him smile in a certain way and blah, 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 drove him crazy. No, you don't need all that. You can have a character get to that same basic end point of the finished character through a very different journey. And we should encourage that. And I was really hoping that, again, that movie's success would spur more variations, both in terms of DC characters, especially DC because they were just not figuring out what to do, but also in Marvel, where they would start to kind of veer outside of the confines of the comics in ways that allowed for interesting storytelling. Unfortunately, the sequel does appear to have veered outside of what most people expected, so I will give it that credit, but not in a way that I think most people are positively responding to. I don't know. We'll eventually get the true backstory on this movie because I have a couple of things that I have questions about and how this thing was actually made. But in terms of what that will then signal, is that going to make DC run back to the well of, okay, we just have to make the Batman movies that we know consistently made money? Is it going to stifle the idea that you can experiment with characters? I don't know. I hope not. I hope that it will be clear that maybe the movie just wasn't quite the movie that people expected it to be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes that can actually reinforce that you should take chances. But what's more than likely is that instead of benefiting from that first movie's kind of anomalous success, they're going to look at this and say, okay, that was a blip. What people really want is just another Batman versus Joker story, and we're going to get 3 or 4 movies like that. I don't like to think that way. I was optimistic before the sequel came out, but my guess is that this is just going to mean that DC's going to go back to what they've always done. We'll see. Later.